just got your new Mac. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the initial setup process. And I'm going to explain each of the choices that you're going to need to make as Apple asks you questions during each screen of the setup process. Now, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you're going to recognize this. Doesn't matter if you boot up an iPad for the first time, or an iPhone for the first time, or in this case, a Mac Mini for the first time, the very first screen you see is going to be hello in all of the world's languages. You simply just click on next, and the button here is probably next, and you go to the next screen. Again, don't overthink this. Pick the language that is appropriate. In our case, I'm going to pick English, and we're going to move on to the next screen. Now, this is takes a little bit more kind of pumping the brakes a little bit and seeing what do we want to do here. Obviously, most people that I'm kind of directing this video to are beginners. If you're a beginner, chances are you're not going to already have a Mac and be using Time Machine and or a startup disk. So that first option, I wouldn't worry about at all. You could use from a Windows PC. The only reason I don't think that's a great choice, and that is if you're a power user on Windows. For me, I've got 700, 800 gigabytes of data on my Windows PC. I'm sure that if I click on from a Windows PC, I can make sure that all that doesn't come over. And the reason I say that is if you're trying to keep your costs down when you get your Mac Mini, you probably just want something with enough storage space for the operating system and your applications. In my case, I did get the 512 gigabyte hard drive or storage drive. But if you wanted to, you could go with the 256 gigabyte. That should be plenty for your OS and your applications. And that just keeps the cost down. Again, in a previous video, I did go over getting a dock that allows you to get an aftermarket SSD and VM drive, pop it into that dock up to 8 terabytes to expand storage later on when you've got some extra cash around. So again, if you've got a smaller hard drive on your Mac than you do on the Windows PC, you got to kind of deal with choices there of make sure I don't bring all my data over and run into using up everything on the storage on the Apple. So I just don't think that it'll be as clean of a process if you do from a Windows PC. Now, if you're already an Apple user and you have a phone, you can use setup with iPhone or iPad. And that's what I did. And so as we go through this, we'll see the screens that are associated with using your phone. So I would use either setup with the iPhone or iPad, or I would use setup as new. All right. You click on that and you click on continue. And then in the next screen, you'll have, what's your name? And it'll ask you what's going to be your username. And the other thing to keep in mind with the Macs don't allow you to use a PIN. So if you're using a numbered PIN to log into your Windows computer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever, not going to work on a Mac. You actually have to have an actual password. You can put a hint. And again, if you do have an Apple account, or again, you do have an iPhone, you could check this box for allow computer account password to be reset with your Apple account. I went ahead and did that. Again, probably won't ever need it. I use a password keeper, and I've got the password for my Mac in the password keeper. But I would check that if you have an Apple account. If not, no big deal. Put your password, verify your password, put it in your password keeper. All right, folks, that's not an Excel spreadsheet. That's not, a notebook where you take out the old school notebook and a pen and write it in there. You could if you wanted to, but a password keeper, something like Bitwarden, is what I would recommend. All right. Then from there, you click on next. Terms and conditions. This is your standard stuff. You want to read through it, and then you want to click on I have read and agree to the macOS software license agreement and iCloud terms and conditions. If you don't check on that, it won't give you the option to agree and move on. So click on agree, and we move on to continue. In the next screen, because I'm using the Apple, I wasn't able to take a screenshot of that. But you know how you scan a QR code with your phone? If you're actually setting this up with your phone, what's going to happen is going to give you, and you might have noticed this with if you're setting up an Apple iWatch, they give you that circle, and you go and you grab your iPhone's camera and you get into the circle. It's just like a QR code, only it's a circle instead of a square. And then from there, it's going to give you the pin that you use, and you type in the pin here, and then boom, you'll be able to connect and go to the next step of the setup process. Now here for enable location services, something that I want to mention also with all this. This isn't permanent. All right. If you decide I don't want to enable location services, I want to keep things private, but down the road you're like, man, this is kind of clunky. I'm trying to use maps, and every time I try and go into the map, it doesn't recognize where I live. You can go into settings later on and enable this. I'm going to enable it now. I don't have a problem with Apple knowing my location. That way, if I do go into maps at any time later on the Mac, it'll know my location. Again, you can turn this off down the road if you decide I don't want to use this anymore. All right, then you can click on next. And then you come to this screen. Again, analytics. Again, all this stuff can be toggled on or off later on if you want to. For me, nah, you don't need to know anything about me other than my location. You're not going to get any analytics from me as far as, how to improve products. I don't even really care about sharing crash data with you. I'll figure it out if my Mac happens to crash. That's not going to happen though, right? Because Macs never crash. And I'm being facetious, but yeah. Anyway, then you go ahead and click on continue. From there, again, screen time. I guess if you have kids, you might want to do this. I have my Mac on 24/7. So that would be kind of a weekly report on a Mac that I got running 24/7. I don't know. But I keep all this. I'm not going to worry about screen time. So I just click on setup later and I continue. Okay. From here, one of the latest things that Apple has is Apple Intelligence. For me, I'm a big AI user and I'd like to experiment with this, see what it's all about. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. You could skip it and say, no, I don't want to turn Apple Intelligence on at this time. Maybe I'll turn it on later. You could skip it and just move on. For me, I did go ahead and click on continue. So the question that I had is, I now have the option to summarize my notifications. I can either set this up later, or I can choose notifications to summarize. I'm like, let's just see what this is all about. So I did go ahead and I clicked on choose notifications. For me, I don't mess around with news. I don't need a summary of the news. Entertainment, I don't think I really need a summary of entertainment. But I thought I'd play around with this communication and social, see what kind of summaries I get from that. I also went ahead and just left all other apps set as well. Again, you can click these all on or all off, or just pick one of them if you want. And then just do summarize selected notifications and you move on. Okay. The next step of the process is to choose kind of the default look of your Mac. You've got the light or day view. You have auto, which changes from light to dark depending on the time of the day. In the daytime, it'd probably be light, and then at night it'll switch over to dark mode. For me, I actually clicked on dark. I think it's easier on the eyes, at least for me. So I've got mine set to dark. I might have set it to light just for default purposes once I boot up, and don't shock everybody, kind of to make it focused on the continuity, if you will. But pick one. Again, this is something you can change down the road too. All right. At that point, the next question we have is, do we want it to update automatically? I say yes. I think it's real important to keep our computers, whether it's Windows computers, Macs, or Linux, keep them all updated. And if I can update automatically, fine. I know with Windows that might be playing with fire. A lot of things get broken when you have Windows updates go. But I play with fire. I just have it set to automatically, and the same thing with the Mac. If you wanted to, you could have it just download it, and then it'll ask you, do you want to update your computer? And you can do it that way as well. Not a big deal, but I do recommend keeping it updated automatically. Okay. Now from there, boom, it's going to go through and it's going to take a few seconds. I don't remember how long it took. Again, these are screenshots that I took during my setup process, but we're at the final step and it's going through and saying welcome. Once it's done with that, we are going to actually boot into our Mac system, and this is what it looks like on the initial setup. Again, I'm kind of zoomed in here. You'll get a better view on the next video. I'm Sean. the Tech Gremlin Warrior. And in the next video, I'm going to go through that initial screen that you get when you boot into Apple and explain the differences between Apple and Windows and the menus and the dock, and just give you the kind of initial view of the Mac. And that'll be in the next video. Thanks for watching.